Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming out for the first event of the spring series of the spring Living Writers series. It's great to see so many faces out there. I can't tell you how nice it is to see so many folks showing up for these events. My students, of course, have to be here, so I'm not really, I guess I'm thanking you. But the rest of you, the folks who are required to be here, and the folks who I really appreciate, we all really appreciate you being a part of this. It's really nice to have participation from faculty as well as students and staff, so thank you. I'd like to thank a few folks and groups who make this possible. This event would not be possible without the help from the Student Government Association, the Canton College Foundation, as well as the School of Business and Liberal Arts. There's a lot of folks that have gone out of their way to make this happen, and I really appreciate that help. Tonight, we have Dr. Sean O'Brien, who is an assistant professor in the Humanities Department, who will be introducing our reader tonight. He's got a great personal connection to the author, which I think is great, and hopefully if you give him a warm welcome, we'll invite him up on the stage. I won't make Sean do the dirty work. This would be a great time to turn your cell phones off, or at least make them silent. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thanks, Joe, for coming. So when I graduated high school, I knew two things with real clarity. One was I didn't like English very much, and the other one was it didn't like me at all. I squeaked by with a D in English my senior year. I avoided English as much as possible when I got to college, but you have to take a class called Literature and the Moral Imagination. And as it happened, my spring semester, after successfully ducking it for a while, I had to take my first college English class, and I did not have high hopes for myself. That was a class with Dr. Tyrone Williams, and we read 9th century African philosophers. We read poets that came out of street gangs, Black Panthers, revolutionaries. We spent a whole class just listening to music, looking at the lyrics, hip-hop, all different punk, all different kinds of music, and it just blew the side out of my skull. It was fantastic. It was amazing. It made English seem important, urgent, real, now, and I couldn't get enough of it. So I took a class from him every year, every spring. And I want my students especially to note this little autobiographical detail. I never missed one of my classes with Dr. Williams, ever, across 4 years. Never skipped one. And in that time, I got to confront the greatest American novel of all time, The Invisible Man. I got to confront amazing intellectuals like Harold Cruz. And also, I got to get a sense of the mind and the practices and the thinking of Dr. Williams himself. And what I found was someone absolutely committed to the intellectual life. Committed to it because ideas and thinking and learning can make you better and can make your world better. Right? And committed to it to such an extent that he reached that thing that is so elusive but so necessary, which is wisdom. So you're going to hear an amazing poetic voice. A guy who can approach things from so many different directions and control the English language in so many different ways to give you whole new patterns and whole new paths of thought about any number of ideas. But you're also going to hear probably the most influential teacher in my life, because when I wanted to go to graduate school, he supported me. When I was looking for where to go to graduate school, he helped me. When I needed letters for graduate school, he provided them. So in a very real way, he's one person that's responsible for me being in front of you right now. And that's pretty freaking awesome as far as I'm concerned. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Williams.
Thanks everyone for having me here, and thanks Philip for organizing this, and to Sean, particularly when I got the in a long time. It's very nice to get the invitation. I must say, however, I don't remember any of those books at that class. But if he says it happened, it happened. Yes. So I thought we were talking earlier about different poems that students have had questions about and concerned about and so forth. And so what I would like, if it's possible, I don't know if it is possible or not, but if there are particular poems, I know a lot of you have read poems from this particular book, Adventures of Pi. So if there are particular poems that you would like for me to read or talk about or explain, I'm like, finally finished. There's already two, three, okay. So what okay, the hands are flying up. So what I thought I would do, I would read those particular poems and then maybe talk about them. And that would be a way of doing this. Okay, so let's start. I saw your hand first.
How do I cross out the X?
Pardon?
How do I cross out the X?
Oh, okay. Looking for my glasses. Oh, the poem that she was talking about was, how do I cross out the X? Malcolm. Sure. So the verse where you have to look up the 16, yeah, look at the table of contents to find the poems. All right, I'll read this poem. How do I cross out the X? Malcolm. Greater than, equal, how do, after the alphabet, 3.14, how do, hope this letter, pound I cross, L finds you, I pray this letter, pound out the L, pray this letter, pound, X, 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 finds, each pound, you, easy pound, whoever you, Mussolini under Whitman's burden, equals less than, when I erase my voice from the tape, do I erase my voice? Even if I swear my voice will not sound like that voice on the tape. Pound and Whitman's burden, difference and differently invokes I, locks, pots, pharmacon, that old black and white TV set of knowledge, guarded in a garden twice removed. Pound and Whitman's burden, difference indifferently invokes I, thoughts, from Africa by good, evil, how do I both lay aesthetics, that affect the agendas, consensus, inter cross sections of the X, Malcolm, Pox, Pharmacon, that old black and white TV set of knowledge, guarded in a garden twice removed from Africa by evil good, X, Malcolm, how to, X, Malcolm, how to turn the page, boy, air, the errand boy of legislators, punch a hole into the page, double the agent of action, without manslaughter, according to P. beyond father, how to account the clothes I'm given, the clothes I buy. The difference, that is, not the things themselves, just the franchise gap. The free market interplay of camouflage and uniform. How to account the clothes I'm given, the clothes I buy. The difference, that is not the things themselves, just the franchise gap. The free market interplay of camouflage and uniform. You want to know what that point's about? Yes. This poem, first of all, I don't remember exactly when I wrote this poem, but I can say that on the front of the book, most of these poems were actually written in the late 70s to the mid 80s approximately. And I was in a period at that time, I was in college, and I was very interested in experimental, crazy lyrics. I was really interested in music of Sun Ra. I don't know if you know his music, sort of interesting jazz musician. And so I decided I would try to do something in poetry that would be equivalent to that. And so instead of just making a poem that you read in a sort of traditional way, I wanted to create this poem where you can read it any way that you want to, in any order. And I've read this poem in many different ways. I read it, pardon?
So you can read this in any form and
Yeah.
it will still mean the same thing?
Well, I couldn't read the same thing, but you can definitely read it in any order that you want. And so I've read it, I've read it like vertically, and I've read it in and went, backwards and so forth. But like I said, a lot of that is inspired by my listening to jazz musicians, particularly experimental jazz musicians like some Sonny Rollins and people like that when I was in college in my early 20s and so forth. So that's part of what's going on there. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, like as you was reading it, it made more sense from when I read it in class. It was just like all over the place when I read it. I had to hold the book and put it down and down and read it.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
I just really like this one, and I want you to do it.
Which one?
Busy signals,
Okay.
page 33.
33? Oh, busy signals? Okay. Actually, both the poem anniversary on the other page and busy signals are about the same person, as it were. And there's actually, I think, several poems in here about this particular person with the 8 H there. People don't have answering phones, or answering machines, I guess, anymore. But you know what answering machines are, right? So that's, well, pardon? Oh, okay, so you heard those, okay. So in some ways it's about that, but it's also about, as you can see, about my sense of sort of feeling alienated from being an American too. And I should say there are lots of poems. In some ways this whole book is about the whole question of what it meant for me to call myself an American. Because I grew up in the 60s during the Black Arts Movement, the Black Militant Movement, the Black Power Movement, and all that. And so there was a real question about whether one should call oneself an American or an African, right? Those were like choices we had to make. And so there are a lot of points in here. The first poem in particular talks about that as much as I may want to call myself, say, an African or identify with certain parts of Africa, the fact is I was born in Detroit, I was raised in Detroit, and so that makes me, whether I like it or not, an American. And so that feeling, that sense of disturbance is really what a lot of these poems are about. And so that's in this particular poem too. Even though it's also about this woman who is trying to reach, she's trying to reach me, you know how that goes. So I'll read it, busy signals. I just tried to call you long distance, tomorrow a conversation or two away. With an ear boxed by a window pane, I'm listening for the sun, that blues shouter, delta belcher, loud enough, I hope, to block out this whispering, a memory and an anniversary, crisscrossing a calendar date, X squared, square X. It was innocence and hubris that made us deaf to our sentence, prolonged in the dumb stutter of America, a nation of aliens like us, mere Americans drowned out by the clamor of all Americans at cross purposes with America. I'm listening for the first notes toward I hear the traffic report of Doppler effects. Okay, what does that mean?
Well, when I was in Southern class, I felt like it was like an immigrant coming to America.
You mean an immigrant poem?
Yes, because my family is not from here.
Uh-huh.
Well, from my knowledge, from Haiti.
Right.
So my mom, she told me her story and how it was coming to America, how she had to, not listening to the story, but some people will know how it was coming to America, they're not from here. So when I read this poem, that's what stood out to me because that's what really touched me because of my understanding.
Yeah, it's really a poem about how, to me, like I said, all Americans, not all, but I think a lot of Americans sometimes feel that they don't belong to America, as it were, even though we're Americans. But yeah, I can obviously see how you can read it as a poem about immigrants because, it's not the same thing, obviously, but it's similar to this feeling of alienation sometimes. To what? I'm sorry.
Of, or, yeah.
Oh, of man. Of man.
And it was Wildfield and also in Total Scale.
Right.
Both seem to be, as though they're trying to embody something as a word.
Well, of man, what is it's the etymologically woman, etymologically means of man. So that's what that's, you're right, it's twice, I think twice in the book. And that's what that refers to. And there I'm trying to emphasize, the notion of a woman as, something of man in the sense of coming from man, and that's a reference directly to the story of Genesis about Adam and Eve and so forth. So that's the two references there. So that was just a question about that particular thing.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, those two poems and also Straight On.
Straight.
It seemed to downplay the ability of the success, to succeed, even somebody who's more capable of bodies effort to be able to succeed. Maybe if it was related to America or those kind of
Well,
inspiration.
so I'll read Straight Out of the Little Man. That's what you're referring to, right? And that's a poem. The Little Man was Freud's term for women, and specifically to a particular part of the genitalia of women. That's what it would refer to. And so this is a poem that in some ways, as you said, sort of argues against that description by Freud. So let me see if I can find that one. 53. Thank you. And yes, the whole football metaphor, obviously. So, does everyone know football terms and so forth? Okay, just because one time I read this poem and I was told by one of the audience, that's a very sexist poem because I don't understand football. So, I just wanted to check. Straight Out with the Little Man. That's why Little Man's in quotation marks. Because she palms the helmet's coat of arms, would-be tacked her stud to the turf. Turning the corner, she tight ropes down the sidelines. Pigskin cropped and crooked in an arm. Would-be blockers watch her back as a blur. A clipped cornerback flies by. Flags fly. The men in stripes are bringing this one all the way back. So it's a poem about, even when there's success on the part of women, sometimes they're called for penalties, and then, they have to start at ground zero again, as it were. Does that make sense?
Page 13, the name of the poem is White Girl.
Yes. That term was a slang term in the 60s and 70s for cocaine. So, yes. So that's what it is. Go ahead.
Can you read the poem? I'd like to
Sure.
hear an interpretation.
To hear my reading interpretation, you mean?
Well, the reading interpretation and what we think the poem is.
What I think the poem is about? That's a good question. I'm sure I do, but okay. White Girl. Two trees, black broken and white sling, dreams its knowledge of life, wrestles angels, lost, love in the name of stop, shooting stars, desperate, love in the name of stop, for runs, before you break, battle blessings, call A plus G's, collapsed H equals crack to code KA, blowjob, Elvis, etc. 1 get no cake, 2 get no cake, 3 get no cake. Frame of frame, 1 get no cake, he'll wait. 2 get no cake, develop film music. 3 get no cake, movie, more, L, Hollywood. So there's a lot of pop references to film and particularly pop music And the song, the stop, Love in the Name of Stop, of course, is the reverse of one of the hit songs of the Supremes, Stop in the Name of Love. I don't know if you know that song. But also, at the end of the poem, Get No Kick is a part of a line from a Cole Porter song, which is called, I get no kick from, the line is I get no kick from cocaine. And it's, the name of the song that just slipped my mind is, I think it might be Night and Day. Does anyone know that song? Aside from, I grew up, my dad loved music, and so jazz music, and I guess what we call today Tin Pan Alley. So when I was a little kid, I listened to people like these old Tin Pan Alley songs, like people from Cole Porter, Rogers and Hammerstein, and so forth. That's what and jazz, that's what I grew up listening to. Right? So part of that is a lot of, again, references to cocaine in terms of these pop music references in that poem. And it's really just a poem about the sort of fascination with, in part with cocaine, but also in terms of racial dynamics too. That's a part of the poem too. But I should say, I mean, I was telling Sean this yesterday, that some of these poems are so old, and I'm so old, that I don't necessarily remember what they're all about. So I'm like a new reader to myself, trying to recall what I was thinking, or feeling even, at the time I wrote them. I think it was, okay, now you can pay that up for a while. Which one? Farewells. Okay. Okay, this is a poem, in some ways, about, this poem was written shortly before I moved from Detroit to Cincinnati in 1983. In some ways, this poem is, I didn't know it at the time that I would be moving, but in some ways for me, looking back at it, it sort of predicts that particular move. But it's really about my decision to leave behind stereotype images of both America and Africa. In other words, this is a point that tries to find a third way. What I was saying earlier about, am I an African or American? So struggling with that issue in my late teens and early 20s. This is a point that sort of says goodbye, it tries to say goodbye to both of those things to try to find a third way. Okay. Is that enough?
No, and how do you do it? 0, 1, 2, 3, or 0, 0, 0?
Yeah, because it starts over, right? And the point of that is that it's never anything. It's never a process where you get to where you're going. You just keep starting over again. Sure. I apologize in advance for the profanity that I seem to recall this in this particular poem. I was writing a series of poems called non-erased poems at this time, so this is non-erased number 23, Farewells. 0, down, up. On paper I wrote plateaus, a mountebank pitching to the valley of state figures. 1, traded in the Maverick for a normal life alone. I've got a place I call my own the first of every month. Still the hair around the navel grows thicker every day. So if the line is tied up when you call, you won't know what they say. What a tangled. Cut it. Out of paper dolls twirl flat into bed, into my mouth as nasty as a lover. 2, even as I shimmer within your eyes, I am disappearing like a teardrop or a coin. If you can see your way to still see me, if you can see these sheets as handkerchiefs or just hands, don't press the issue. Render to Caesar this heavy heart as it bursts for love inside his chest. 3. Will you tear me away by the roots of my hair, Africa? Will you tear out the roots of my hair, America? Will you still hold me when I go bald? When I break away like a forward who cannot be backtracked, buzz around the net until the buzzer sounds, skate or lope away with the hat trick come tray. Take it. Off of lined paper, the lines slide, departing hell, heaven's blank. 0. Down on paper, I wrote a mountebank, hurtling to the niche of little killers. 1. Traded in the maverick for a normal life alone, the first of every month. But the hair around my navel thickens every day. So if the line is tied up when you call, tango, cuts out of paper, dolls swirling into bed, nasty as a lover. 2. Even as I sparkle in your eyes, I disappear like a tear or coin you drop. If you can see your way to see me still, if you can see these leaves as water lilies or driftwood, you will know my body floats close by. Render unto Caesar this heavy heart as it bursts with love within his chest. 3. Will you roll up the scroll of the sky, Africa? Will you roll back the sky of your gaze, America? Will you hold me when I pitch into the wild blue hither? When I plummet from the jet set, tangled in a parachute, a tumbling die? Or will you toss me like a penny into a fountain? Your tiny fist is squeezing me on edge. I won't fall flat on my face until I glimpse the hills of your palm. 0. Down on paper, my hands, my knees, I sculpt earthworks. 1. Traded in a basement for the second level limbo. Now I dream of high-rise suites each month the rent is due. To see the nails and hair yet growing, the milky crust of drool crooked at the mouth, you'd think that I was only sleeping, suffering from the remedies. Will I ever wake up from this coma I wake up in every morning? 2. Even as I waver in your eyes, disappear, reappear, you are turning into the turn of a spiral. If you could walk away from this incidental geometry, turn your back in your Achilles heel, stomp your stomach, I would gladly mutilate your genitalia. And we'll dance in the sky like dry lightning, a torn sheet flapping in a storm. 3. Will you bury me with your kisses like a nymphomaniac, Africa? Will you make my bones fuck this shallow grave, America? And will you let them suckle me dry, grind their cunts into my bleeding gums and sweet lover? Or will you leave with me and remain apart, fronding of this hairline paper, sprayed with lead, these thick crosshairs? Any more requests? Yes.
We had a good debate about where election night was taking place.
Where it was taking place?
Election night?
Uh-huh.
What was the setting of the poll?
Okay. The setting of that point was my apartment.
Okay.
Just apartment. Why? What was the debate?
Well, we were thinking it was at your house or a bar or something like that.
No, just in my apartment, drinking. So close.
I thought bar.
Yes.
Could you elaborate more on the theme of Wild Kingdom?
Wild Kingdom?
Page 30.
Yeah. I read a wonderful novel by Milan Kundera called The Unbearable Lightness of Being. I don't know if you know the novel, but it's been made into a movie too. And I just loved it. But in that book, among other things, he makes the argument that the birth of the lyric poem was coincidental with the birth of gunpowder, which is the last line in this poem. And so in some ways, this poem is about the way in which we like to think of literature as somehow separate from politics and other aspects of our culture. But this is the point that makes the argument that the two things, in fact, are connected. Hence the reference to Aristotle in the second line. Hernando Cortez, of course, was one of the first colonial, led one of the first colonial expeditions of the Spanish in South America. Does anyone know about this? There's a wonderful movie by Herzog, I believe, called The Wrath of God, The Wrath of Gary. Does anyone know that movie? Oh, okay. So anyway, so all that's in this particular poem. And so it's very critical, it seems to me, of the assumption that the lyric is somehow separate from, again, other political aspects of our culture.
I just saw it more as a criticism of the society we currently live in here,
The criticism of,
of the society we live in the United States.
it's,
Of the society where you say state nickel and dimed into that.
right.
Jurisdiction or mortgage future. And the rest of that.
Yeah, and there's what in reference to the young man and so forth. But again, it's more specific than just, it's not a general, it's not a particular general society. It's very specifically about the relations between writing and literature and the rest of society. So that's sort of the attempt to focus there. That one. Yes.
Is it possible if you could read Paul Cross Country's Sphere, Hannibal's Son, and why he made it such a kind of Hannibal-centered topic compared to this very kind of heartbreaking poem? I really love this particular poem.
Okay.
It's 28.
Yeah, I'm there. Okay, so there was this girl. Is that the way it always starts? And I guess in my imagination in this particular poem, we were like from different walks of life. So, and as a term, I don't know what I was necessarily trying to evoke across country skier, but that in some ways it's about her class too. You know, she crossed country skis, but also, you know, Hannibal, of course, crossed the mountains. They obviously. So she's here, and so it's really, now that I look at it, it's really like self-inflated, right? I'm taking this great journey, and she's doing that. But it's about, it's about what it seems to be about. We spent one night together, and when I woke up, or half woke, I could hear her car starting. So, I'm okay. Would you like me to read it? For a while, I said, as we slept in my arms, as we slept on the sofa, a fist armed with mixed dice. Later that evening, as we slept, clouds stood across the table of the city, installing a carpet of blind dice, a glare under the interrogation of a single bulb sky, false witness dawning on our fugitive dreams. I must have been still asleep when you rolled out of my arms. Something woke me. I saw you there at the window, as though surrendering to the searchlight of the city. Your pale pink skin appeared white, and in the shadows of the sofa, I imagined my dark brown skin disappeared, invisible, black. Later that morning, I understood the futility of flight when I woke up squirming in the arms of the sun and listening to the faint putter of your import. And I knew we'd never talk about the night we tried to pretend we could fall asleep in each other's arms. Okay. Yes.
Is there a connection between Mama's Boy, the poem, and Farewell?
No, not. I mean, obviously both are about journeys, you know, in some respects. But Mama's Boy is really about after I moved to Cincinnati, I didn't have a car initially, so I would take the Greyhound back to Detroit a lot and so forth. And so that poem in some ways is a criticism of my desire to go back to Detroit because I kept thinking somehow in my mind if I went back, I would find something there that I thought was missing in Cincinnati. You know, it's in other words about missing home to a certain extent. But it's also about realizing that, in fact, you know, whatever I thought was missing in Detroit was gone, had been long gone. So that's part of what it's really about. Which in some ways, I guess, is similar to the theme of farewells. I hadn't thought about that, but there is a similarity. Would you like me to read Mama's Boy?
If you want to, go ahead.
Or you can do just sit down. Okay, what page is that one?
72.
72. Let's do it again. Yeah, there are lots of poems in, there's a poem about cars we were talking about earlier,
Yeah, did you own the Taco?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Was it fast?
Pardon?
Was it fast?
When it was running. Yes, it was fast, yes. So here's Mama's Boy. I'll skip the dedication, but the Four Wise Men by Michael Tournier is a wonderful novel. I'll talk about it later. And you know the origin of the term Mama's Boy? Does anyone know that? It's like a derogatory term. Does everyone know that? Okay, I just want to be sure. He's a mama's boy. That's okay. At least once a month, a man boards a bus bound for Detroit. One bag, a few bucks. Nevertheless, he always tells himself, I just might leave Cincinnati for good. Just cut out and never look back. When he arrives in the Motor City, he drinks and drinks it all in until he's dead drunk on all fours. A 2-year-old mama's boy, bawling all night, night after night, for the salt-sweet milk of his sister mother, turning in her sleep from her hard back, turning toward the Canadian border. When at long last he takes a bus back to the Queen City, long after the only rest stop, he notices the first signs: merciless thirst, goring hunger, swollen ankles, what the folks down south call sugar.
What did you mean by mama's sister?
By what?
When he says mama's sister?
You mean sister mother?
Yeah.
In that part?
What do you mean?
Because because the poem is about this supposed man who actually turns into a little boy, in fact into an infant to a certain extent, symbolic for the look of his sister, mother, which is to say that on one hand he's looking for, if you will, looking for love, right? So I mean sister in the sense of, so this is from the 60s or 70s, like a sister, like another black woman in that way. But it's obviously playing with a whole bunch of, incest too. Right? Yeah. It's weird, yeah. It's a weird poem. Well, there's a weird person wrote it. That guy.
I would like you to read Nut House to Big House, and I was wondering if it was about sexuality as well as race, or if it had an underlying meaning.
Yes, right. It's about gender as well as race. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Nut House to Big House?
Yes, sir, page 54.
Nut House to Big House. This disease, though incurable, is controllable with a proper prescription. Each of us here can live a long and normal life on one condition, that we take the medication at regular intervals. Nevertheless, the incompletely cured, startled, post-op burn patients, patched together with skin grafts, pink bandages, hermaphrodites, castrated crouches, bloody, caught up in circulation, an economy of clots, preserved equilibrium, impotence equals appropriation. Thus this exodus out of hospice, outpatients free at last, join the troupe as understudies, reenact the plots of silent comedies, and glass-framed screens, the cast and crew from Coops, who refuse placebos, diagnosis terminal, penis and or pigment envy. So that's what equating the desire to be white with the desire to be a man, because both of us are seen as equivalent to power. Okay, there's lots of hands in the back. Well, I had to start in the back, but it's got its head set up right there. Pardon? Yes, who?
What was the call to election of
What was mention that about? Just about, I think there's a line that says, so sick and tired or sick and tired. That's what it's about. Yes. Okay. I was ignoring you. Which one? Women's Trouble? About my mother? Yeah. Women Troubles. That's on 61, yes. This is, I mean, in some ways this poem was written because there was a time when this notion of, if you went through a lot of trouble in your life and pain and suffering, somehow that gave you character that made you a better person. And that just seems to be not right now, because it seems to justify the suffering, right, that people go through, because they make you a better person. So I was thinking about my mother and about, the life she had, still has. My mother's alive. I know the poem doesn't make it seem like it, but she is still alive, so I'll just read the poem. I don't know if Mama had women troubles. For all I know, it was anything but. Collars and chitlins boiling in the burnings in mid-August. B, catching the bus in the dark both ways, in between the bedpans of old white women. C, the punch-drunk brawler who had lost his mouthpiece, taking one too many Chryslers on the chin. D, the door-slamming name-calling birth pains of her daughter's teen ages. E, all the above and a hell of a lot more. I just noticed about that first stanza? Everybody, I see I name a lot of people who made my mother's life so painful, except me. I didn't even notice it until I'm the only one who was exempt, anyway. I don't know if Mama got caught in the crossfire between the rebels on either side of her skin, half seams in the corners of her eyes, blood storms buffeting her about. I didn't know, not then, about a woman's body, how it fights sometimes on two fronts, civil wars, world wars. I tired, I tried, double jeopardy, weekly passes to church on Sundays, bingo on Tuesdays. I didn't know, not then, of my mother's troubles, the troubles that did not make her strong, the troubles that did not give her character, the troubles that knocked her good teeth out, the troubles that ran rings around her eyes, the troubles that cracked her stubborn back, the troubles that made her way too old to live long enough to get old. Yes.
I actually noticed that before you actually said that you would write yourself in there, I was like, okay, there's a son in there.
Yeah, like I said, everybody made my life, my mother's life hard except me. I was exempt because I was the perfect child. Okay.
I was wondering if you could read all the water flashes on Eastern Five.
Which one?
Water flashes on Eastern Five. Trying to explain the meaning or the story behind it.
Yep. See, what page is that again? Oh, 25. Okay. Border clashes. It's the second part of the poem is about, we were talking this earlier about, I grew up in Detroit, so we would come over to Canada a lot, go to Canada a lot. And so that's what the second part of the poem is about. But I'll read it, then I'll talk maybe a little bit about the rest of it. And El Zocalo is a Mexican restaurant in it's called Mexican Town in Detroit, just across the Canadian border. We strolled out of El Zocalo to find a world turning white with snow. Not more than an hour ago, or so it seems, it was still just a neighborhood of homemade heaps and small dark houses huddled against the single-digit skies of southwest Detroit. Kim plods to his escort. I fire up the tempo, turn on the wipers. I-75 to the lodge. I pretend to follow the North Star, but pull off at the Warren Forest exit and pull into the 3rd Street Saloon. I take out a 5 for strolls and take a look around at the only other patrons, table of students, one of whom I know, a poet. She catches my eye, looks away, carelessly laughing, as I recall. Christmas night at the Detroit-Windsor border. I sat alone in the back of an Accord, being driven by Mary, Katie beside her, two sisters, nearsighted, brown hair, blonde. The guard bent down, jerked his head my way, and sneered, "You gals bringing anything across?" Flashing licenses and teeth, is that all? Katie, enraged, swore for hours. But how could I who have always lived between countries, between that night and another night, 13 years before, when my girlfriend and I found ourselves detained by customs because I was said to resemble a West Indian brother 20 years my senior. Later, back in the USA, Katie and I danced our asses off. Sweat flung from the sprinkler, our figures cut, twinkled like icy stars on the stage, lit unlit by slow-mo strobes. I could smell the sweat of 100 worlds, the sweet and sour stench of cheap perfume and bargain brand soap. It was the hot sauce and garlic of Hamtramck in Hyde Park, Ray's Brothers and Brothers Barbecue, Eastern Market in Lafayette, Coney, an ethnic festival teeming with bloods. When the lights came up, we filed up, stunned, as though the places to which we had to return, Plymouth and Detroit, had been found dead in each other's arms, murder-suicide. Last call, and I'm just fine. I stumbled to my car, spin out of the lot in a spray of sleet and mud, and hit the northbound lodge at 60. Not a few of these vehicles are harboring drunks like me. The world is still turning white. The white dotted lines are useless now. We weave our ways home as best we can in lines of our own making. I guess this poem is, this is again one of those poems that, as they say, actually happened. So it's really kind of a transcription, although the middle part is about two memories. We stopped at the border guard with these two friends of mine, two women, and then that memory leading to another memory when I had stopped 13 years earlier with my girlfriend. And so it's in part, it's about the desire to sort of create friendships and relationships across boundaries, racial boundaries, but there's always, it's a clash. There's always a problem, there's always an obstacle. There are always guards, if you will, interrogating that attempt to cross boundaries. Does that make sense? Good, I'm glad I did, because it didn't seem like it's making sense to me, but okay.
She catches my eye and looks away. The student that you knew, was that Katie?
No, this is someone completely.
So that just triggered the memory?
That triggers the memory. Again, about this attempt to sort of connect. It's odd now thinking about standing up and reading these poems and thinking about that. So many of the poems are about the desire to connect and the desire to disconnect, to leave too. A lot of poems about traveling and journeys, but also, trying to make connections too. And both of those are about crossing boundaries too. Yes, I'll wait in the back.
I'm still stuck on your busy signals.
Busy signals?
So I think it was across from anniversaries.
Yes.
I just really liked that middle line. It was innocence and hubris that made us deaf to our sentence.
Right.
That part. I really liked that a lot. And I was just wondering if this is pretty clearly about the African American experience with reference to the KKK. And
Right.
I was just wondering, would you be offended if someone took that and considered it applicable to another social justice issue like the LGBT struggle or
No, I wouldn't be offended by that at all. No, it's not. You're right, that's a specific reference, but I think the whole idea of poetry is that hopefully it can create connections, if you will, with people with other experiences and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Right there, and then, oh, there, and then there, and then there. Okay. This is like class, I can do this.
You said when you were a teenager writing poems, you
Yes.
struggled with defining yourself as either American or an African.
Right.
What do you define yourself as now?
Teacher. Not really, African American, I suppose. But yeah, these are of course about that early struggle, okay? There was a hand up over here. I had a teacher in junior high school, Miss Horn, who was, I was 13, and she was I used to say that she gave us writing assignments, and we would write, but I couldn't figure out why I started writing poetry, but then I remembered that she was very cute. And so I started writing to impress her, because I was 13, hormones are, so do I remember the first poem I wrote? No, I don't. I'm sorry. That did what? I was very close to as a poem, that's why I was very close to I am very close to my mother. My father drove a truck, and even before that, he worked at for automotive companies, so he was gone a lot, working double shifts, and then when he started driving a truck, he was driving across the country. So my mother, I was closer to my mother. I am closer to my mother on some levels. Okay. Yes, anybody?
What was your favorite piece out of the book?
My favorite what?
Piece out of the book.
Out of this book? My favorite? I don't know that I have favorites. Let's see. Let me think about that. Okay, while I ask another question. Yes.
I just have another question concerning women troubles.
Right.
I always like the line, I didn't know not then about a woman's body, how it fights sometimes on two fronts, civil wars and world wars. I was wondering what you meant by that.
Talking about, on the one hand, the troubles that I referred to in the first stanza, the world wars and so forth, just making a living and taking the bus to work and coming back late at night, and so forth. Or as Toni Morrison has a wonderful line in Beloved, she calls it from can't see to can't see, because it's dark when you leave, it's dark when you come back. And then eternal troubles, that's referring to menopause. I didn't know anything about that when I was a kid, so. 11? Is that page 11? For black men? No, as a whole. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, because you say, for black, as you read the poem, you can tell it's about black men. So then I would just have to think about us as people as a whole, how we.
Oh, I see. Yeah, but it's specifically about black men, but it's about across the diaspora, African diaspora and so forth. So it's about all black men, where they are in the world. Yes, back again. Well, actually, okay. Let's get it.
Do you think you can talk about the American composition for the one on page 37? I was just wondering, who were you referring to when you said, at least I have haircut you these weeks? Or I.
Oh, who's it, you?
Yeah, that's who were you referring to.
That's a reference to my ex-girl. At the time of the poem, when I moved to Cincinnati, my girlfriend broke up with me in Detroit. Yeah, can you believe that? That's called. So that's the you in the poem. Okay. I mean, obviously, but although I have to say that my first immediate reaction to the riot was that I could not play Little League baseball that year, that summer. And I've always said that had I been able to play, I would now be, well, I would be retired, but I would have been a Major League Baseball player. But that riot stopped my career. I'm sure of it. It had nothing to do with the fact that I couldn't hit a curve.
Was that ever a time in school where you disliked poetry?
Was what?
Was that ever a time in school where you disliked poetry?
It was just like, you said school was like poetry?
Was that ever a time in school
When you
you
didn't like
disliked
it.
poetry?
When I didn't like poetry? I don't think, not so much that I didn't like it, but I didn't understand, that, when the teacher asks you to read a poem and tells you to explain what the poem means and you have no idea what's going on, that I remember very well. And which is why I don't teach poetry that way when I teach it, because it's like a guessing game and the teacher is like in the Wizard of Oz, he's got behind the curtains, he's got all the secrets back there. I don't like that mode. So what I try to do when I teach poetry is read the poem, talk through the poem with the students, and give them the background, the context for what the author is trying to do. Because you can't figure out a poem unless you know the context, right? There's a lot of reasons why teaching poetry developed the way it did in this country. We don't have time to go into that now.
What do you find yourself mostly writing about now?
Probably more, I should probably say social, political issues. But there's a theory that every poet is essentially writing the same poem, like 3 or 4 poems, over and over and over and over again. We have this small body of obsessions. And they change, the forms change over the years, but the obsessions probably don't change that much. That's one theory. So I don't know. I think the poems are probably more experimental that I write now, but I think they come out of the same place. The sense of trying to find a place.
What exactly would be your definition of poetry?
A poetry? I don't know that I have a definition of poetry. To me, it's I don't know. I can't define it. I know it when I see it, but really can't define it. So back to the question, what's my favorite poem in this book? I think who asked me that question? Someone over here. Probably one of my favorite poems is, just because I think it was, for me, a poem that I felt really good about the way it turned out as a craft, as a poem, is a poem, History. History, which is, that's where it is. 39, 49. I don't know if this is my favorite, but it's one of my favorite poems in here. Because for me, at least, everything I was trying to do in the poem came out just right. It's another poem about issue of gender, and women and men. So history is also a play of history, and so forth. In that poem.
What are your hobbies?
What are my what?
Hobbies.
Hobbies? Listening to music. It's probably my major one.
Have you ever heard of play a jazz instrument?
No, I never. I tried to play the guitar. I gave that up because I couldn't play the guitar.
Do you prefer to write like a narrative poem over a lyric poem?
Prefer? No, I've written both kinds. It's like preferring, do you like chocolate or peanut butter? You try to make Reese's cups, right? So that's what I try to do with poetry. There's another hand up. Which one? Dorian Blue, yes.
Was it more of you reliving a moment, or was that like a metaphor of how you was feeling?
It's a metaphor for how I was feeling. about the same person's anniversary, and what's the other one? The busiest singers. So we can Google that person and find out who she is. Yes.
This person that inspired you, like, me drawing this poem, y'all ended up bad terms?
Did I what?
Did y'all end up bad terms? Because the poem seems like a big
Did I have my back?
No, that you and this female that inspired you, like, you were in a little busy signals, y'all end up bad terms.
Did we? I'm sorry, I can't.
Did you end on bad terms?
Oh no, we're actually good friends. No, we're actually good
Does
friends.
she know that they're about her?
I've sent it to her. Yeah. I was hoping that it would work, and she would, but it didn't. She said, "That's nice." Oh, that's so nice.
This woman, was she more like a crush or a fan?
More like a crush or what?
Was she more like a crush and she didn't know you like her, or you guys really mutual?
All right, calling Dr. Phil. I think it was mutual. I mean, I think it's why we're friends still today, because it was mutual. And yeah, it is mutual. So, I don't know. Boy, I didn't realize my personal life would be dissected, so I don't know. You're back. Yep.
Who's your favorite jazz drummer?
Probably Roach. Oh, I like Alvin Jones too. But those two.
What is the title of the book you?
Was it this book? The symbol pi. Now, when I wrote this book, I didn't know that mathematicians eventually would figure out that pi is not random. It doesn't go up to infinity. But I thought when I wrote the book that it did. So it's about this notion of traveling onto just the journey, the travel adventure to infinity, which turns out not to be infinity.
If you had like one person you could say that was your most influenced by, who would it be?
You mean poetry?
Yeah.
Probably Ed Hirsch, one of my teachers at, partly more because he introduced me to a lot of different poets that I hadn't heard of and so forth. But this was in grad school, actually. So I had good teachers before that, but he was the one that sort of broadened my scope towards what I knew. In the back, you too, yes.
You said that these poems that you wrote in this book, you wrote them in like the 80s. What made you, like when this book got 2011, so many years later?
Because nobody would publish it. Nobody would touch it. Perhaps a good reason. Pardon? Yes. Almost always.
What's your process when you're writing? Like, what do you go through when you're working?
It varies. I keep a journal like a lot of writers. I write down notes and ideas and so forth, and then assemble them later. But sometimes I get an idea and I write it down and scribble it on a piece of paper, the back of a notebook, or even today, like the hotel pad, I just grabbed a piece of paper and wrote something down very quick as I was reading. So just keep notes.
I was just, so basically what you were trying to say is a lot of your poems still stem from the same theme of like social or political awareness, and is your new poetry still branching off of that, but what kind of form? Is it even more experimental, or is it?
Not the poems that I'm working on currently. Actually, I did a very experimental book a couple of years ago, but these poems I've been writing the last year or so are sort of short lyric poems. They're all about boats. Boats. Ships, yeah. I think, we're way past.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everybody, for showing up. Dr. Williams will be down here signing books, for those of you who would like to get your books signed. And our next reading will be at the end of March.